Chaos had its
Forgive my
rhythm,
intrusion,
and Captain
Your
Kalen
Majesty,
Draven knew it
but
better
I
than
bring
most.
urgent news from the
For
border.
3 years, he had lived through evacuations that carried the staccato beats of gunfire, the shrill cries of children, and the deep groaning engines of overburdened transports straining to lift into orbit. On the frontier world of Aranthos, that rhythm was deafening, flashes of plasma fire painting the night sky while transports struggled skyward with their human passengers. To Command said it was a success, thousands of colonists already gone, only a handful of stragglers left behind. But as Kalen's boots crunched across the blackened rubble of what had once been a research wing, the rhythm fractured. He heard it, thin, piercing, desperate. Crying. "Perimeter clear, Captain," came Lieutenant Voron's voice through the comms. "No colonists left in sectors 7 through 12. Enemy scouts inbound, 20 minutes out at most." Kalen's tactical display confirmed it. The last transport was fueling, engines whining in readiness. They had minutes, not hours. Enough time to finish the sweep, enough time to get out. And yet. "Voron," Kalen murmured, slowing his steps. "Check your sensors again. Audio sweep, lower band." A pause. Then Voron's curt reply, "Negative. No human signatures. Only faint anomalies, non-human. High-stress indicators. Juvenile." Kalen stopped dead. Juvenile. Children. He tightened his grip on the rifle slung at his shoulder, torn between protocol and instinct. Orders from Admiral Corvin had been crystal clear: evacuate human colonists only. No complications. No interference with alien civilians. Certainly no entanglements with the Seraphine Empire, whose ships were already massing on the far side of the system. But the crying came again, echoing faintly through broken steel beams and shattered glass, drawing him toward the ruins. He swallowed hard. "I'll check it myself." "Sir, that's not wise," Voron argued. "Whatever it is, it's not our mission." Kalen cut the channel. The research wing had collapsed into a jagged labyrinth, its walls twisted by orbital bombardment. His armor scraped against metal as he forced his way through, following that fragile sound. When he found them, the breath caught in his throat. 2 small figures huddled behind an overturned console. Both had alabaster skin that shimmered faintly in the glow of his helmet lamp, faces framed by hair so pale it seemed spun from moonlight. Their ears tapered to delicate points, marking them as unmistakably Seraphine. Children of the rival empire. The elder, no more than 8 by human reckoning, stepped forward despite trembling knees, planting herself between Kalen and her smaller sister. Her eyes glowed silver, enormous against her pale face, and when she spoke, her voice carried the lilting cadence of a language his translator struggled to parse. A single word emerged clear: protection. Kalen's training screamed at him, "Leave them, walk away, this is not your war." Yet he lowered his rifle, slowly removing his helmet so they could see his face. "It's all right," he said, dredging up the handful of Seraphine words he remembered from cultural briefings. "Safe. With me." The younger child whimpered, clutching her sister's hand, while the older whispered another name, sharp and resonant enough to trigger a priority alert in his translator: Elenia. Queen. Mother. Kalen's blood ran cold. These were not just children. These were princesses. The comm in his ear crackled again. "Captain, enemy fleet just dropped from hyperspace. They'll be in range within minutes. We have to go." Kalen stared at the girls, pale skin, pointed ears, trembling but still defiant. Every regulation demanded he leave them. If the Seraphine found humans carrying their royal heirs, it could ignite war beyond imagining. But every fiber of his being rebelled against walking away. The elder reached toward him at last, placing her tiny hand in his. Kaelin felt an odd hum at the contact, as though her body carried faint currents of energy. "Celiora," she said, pointing to herself, then to her sister. "Arinya." Kaelin swallowed, lifting Arinya into his arms while Celiora clung to his free hand. They weighed so little, and yet the burden felt immense. "Kaelin," he answered softly, touching his chest. "Kaelin Draven." They crept back through the wreckage, Celiora refusing to release him even when jagged beams threatened to cut her hands. At the landing pad, Voran's voice rose in shock. "Captain, what the hell?" "Emergency evac," Kaelin barked, striding up the ramp with the children. "2 miners abandoned in a war zone. We don't leave children. Not today." Voran hesitated, but enemy contacts blazed red on the tactical display. "Fine. Strap in before they tear us apart." The transport roared skyward, leaving Aranthos shrinking beneath them. Kaelin strapped Celiora and Arinya into jump seats beside him, their luminous eyes fixed on him as if he were the only solid thing in a shattering universe. Outside, Seraphine warships slid into formation, their silver hulls glinting like blades. Somewhere aboard one of those ships, Queen Alenia would soon discover her daughters were missing. As the stars stretched into the streaks of hyperspace, Kaelin realized what he had done. He had broken orders, risked war, and taken into his care 2 children whose existence could reshape the galaxy. And yet, as Celiora leaned against his arm and Arinya curled in his lap, their faint cries softening at last, Kaelin knew he would make the same choice again. Some duties were given. Others chose you.
The jump to hyperspace should have felt like relief, but Captain Kaelin Draven sat tense, his hands resting on his knees while the 2 pale-skinned girls huddled against him. The transport's hum filled the silence between them. Around him, colonists whispered nervously, casting wary glances toward the Seraphine children. No one said it aloud, but the thought ran through every mind: why had a human officer brought enemy royalty aboard their last hope of escape? Celiora sat upright beside him, silver eyes scanning the cabin, her pointed ears twitching with every sound. Though clearly exhausted, she kept one arm protectively around her younger sister. Arinya, smaller, curled into Kaelin's chest, fingers tangled in the fabric of his uniform as though letting go might cast her adrift. Her silent trust was heavier than any weight of armor. The medical officer, Dr. Morel Koss, approached with careful steps. She crouched to Celiora's level, offering a gentle smile. "They're glowing again," she murmured to Kaelin. Indeed, faint ripples of light shimmered beneath their pale skin, swirling in colors his translator identified as distress. "They miss their mother," Kaelin answered quietly, remembering the name they had whispered in the ruins, Alenia. Queen of the Seraphine Empire. He had not spoken it since. Saying it now made his stomach knot. Dr. Koss nodded. "Their biology broadcasts emotions. No way to hide fear. It's like carrying a beacon of grief." She offered a pouch of nutrient juice to Arinya, who eyed it suspiciously before nibbling at the straw. Celiora only watched, solemn and silent, but her grip on Kaelin's arm tightened. Over the following days, the refugee transport Aurora's Mercy carved its way through the void toward Kepler Station. Kaelin discovered that time with children was measured not in hours but in questions. Why do humans hide their feelings? Celiora asked one evening, her small voice stumbling through words in his language. She sat cross-legged on the deck, her glowing patterns shifting from faint blues of sadness to cautious curiosity. "Because our skin doesn't show them like yours," Kaelin replied, his voice softer than he'd ever used on duty. "We speak with words, or we stay quiet." "That is lonely," Arinya said suddenly, her tiny hand tugging at his sleeve. The translator rendered her words with halting precision, yet the weight of them was unmistakable. Kalen had no answer. Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his tone to the kind of hush that belonged to bedtime stories. It doesn't have to be. You can learn to read someone's eyes, their voice, even their silences. That's how we know. Celiora tilted her head, as if testing his claim, and then whispered, "You always know when we miss Mama." The word struck him deeper than any reprimand. As days blurred, Kalen became their anchor. They would not eat unless he encouraged them. They refused to sleep unless he was close, Celiora curling against his arm while Arinya draped across his chest. Other refugees muttered, fear, suspicion, even disgust, but none could ignore the innocence of two little girls who had lost everything. At last, the inevitable summons came. The comm crackled. "Captain Draven, report to the communications deck. Priority 1. Kalen pried himself free from the girls' desperate grips, murmuring promises to return. Their lights dimmed at once, streaks of violet anxiety racing across their skin. He touched Celiora's hair in reassurance, then strode away, feeling their eyes on his back. The deck buzzed with activity. Admiral Corvin's stern face dominated the holodisplay, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Captain Draven. You disobeyed standing orders during Arantho's evacuation. And now, intelligence confirms what you've already realized. Those children are not ordinary civilians. They are the daughters of Queen Elenia herself." The words dropped like a weight across the deck. Kalen stood rigid. "Sir, they were abandoned in a war zone. I could not. You could have obeyed." Corvin's gaze narrowed. "The Seraphine believe we kidnapped their royal heirs. Entire fleets are mobilizing. Do you grasp what you've done? You may have sparked war." The accusation burned, but Kalen forced himself to speak levelly. "With respect, sir, I saved them. They're alive because of us. If we return them through proper channels." "That is not your decision to make," Corvin cut in. "Officially, you're confined to quarters pending inquiry." Unofficially, his expression softened slightly. "They trust you, Draven. Perhaps you're the only one keeping them stable until negotiations at Kepler Station. Fail them, and we all pay the price." Kalen exhaled slowly, his mind whirling. Guardian, not soldier. Protector, not captor. When he returned to the passenger bay, Celiora and Arinya launched toward him with unrestrained relief, their luminous patterns blooming from anxious purples to joyous golds. "Papa Kalen," Arinya whispered in halting standard, clinging fiercely to him. The word froze him in place. He had never asked for the title, but the way her small voice shaped it, the way Celiora's gaze softened with shy approval, it bound him more tightly than any oath of service. He lowered himself between them, arms wrapping around their fragile forms. "I'll always come back," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if he was promising the children or himself. Outside, stars streaked past, carrying them closer to Kepler Station, closer to a queen who believed him a criminal, and closer to a future where duty and love would collide in ways no regulation could prepare him for. 3 months on Kepler Station reshaped Captain Kalen Draven's life more than 3 years of campaigns ever had. He was no longer just a soldier, he had become something closer to a father, fumbling through routines that no training manual had prepared him for. His quarters looked less like military housing and more like a mismatched nursery. Arinya's sketches cluttered the walls, depicting shimmering forests and crystalline palaces that she described in halting words as home. Celiora corrected her with patient dignity, guiding her little sister's hand across the tablet, though her own drawings betrayed equal longing. Every night before bed, Celiora demanded he braid her hair in the traditional Seraphine style, intricate weaves taught to him through stubborn demonstration. His fingers fumbled, but she never complained. Arinya, meanwhile, insisted on lullabies. Human songs fell flat without Seraphine harmonics, yet when Kalen sang softly, they smiled anyway. Their bioluminescent skin pulsed faint hues of contentment, and for a little while, the ache of separation eased. But peace was fragile. And it shattered the moment the station's comms chimed with priority alerts. Kalen was summoned to the command deck, leaving 2 anxious girls clinging to his sleeves until he swore he would return. Admiral Corvin waited by the central holodisplay, his usually granite features showing strain. "The Seraphine delegation has arrived," Corvin said. "They demand immediate access to the children." Kalen stiffened. "They're not ready. Months apart, the trauma, it could destroy what little stability they've found." "Do you expect me to refuse the Queen of an Empire, Draven?" Corvin snapped. "Queen Elenia herself leads the delegation. She believes we abducted her daughters. If we delay, she might unleash her fleets." Kalen's pulse thundered. Elenia, mother, ruler, the figure who haunted Celiora and Arinya's whispered dreams. To her, Kalen was no savior. He was the thief who had stolen her children. That night, back in his quarters, Celiora tugged at his arm with urgent silver eyes. "Mama doesn't know," she whispered. "She doesn't know you sang for us. She doesn't know you kept us safe. She thinks we were stolen." The raw truth broke him more than any accusation. To Elenia, months had passed with no word. Every day, her fear had hardened into fury. "What if we go together?" Kalen suggested slowly. "What if I stand beside you, so she sees the truth?" The sisters exchanged a look, their glowing patterns flaring into hues of cautious hope. "Would you?" Arinya asked softly. "Even if Mama is angry with you?" Kalen brushed a hand across her pale hair. "Even then. Families face things together." An hour later, dressed in the stiff weight of his formal uniform, Kalen walked through Kepler Station's diplomatic quarter with Celiora holding one hand and Arinya clinging to the other. Their light patterns shimmered with excitement tangled in fear, painting aurora across the corridor walls. The reception chamber doors parted, revealing a hall transformed by Seraphine artistry. Holographic gardens filled the space with echoing birdsong, and mineral scents reminiscent of their homeworld drifted in the air. At the center stood Queen Elenia. Tall and commanding, she wore robes that glowed as if woven from moonlight. Her alabaster skin radiated authority, her pointed ears adorned with crystalline ornaments that chimed faintly as she moved. Her luminous eyes locked on the children, and in that instant, all regal composure broke. "Celiora. Arinya." Her voice rang in pure Seraphine harmonics. The girls released Kalen's hands at once, running toward her with cries that cracked the air with joy. They threw themselves into her embrace, their skin glowing in blazing patterns of recognition and relief. Kalen stood frozen at the threshold. He should have felt triumph at the reunion, but instead there was only emptiness where the children's weight had been. Then came the sharp order, "Seize the human." The Queen's general, armored in silver and radiating hostility, gestured. Guards unsheathed energy spears, leveling them at Kalen's chest. Celiora spun, stepping between them and Kalen with her arms spread wide. "No," she cried, her harmonics piercing enough to make the chamber's crystal fixtures resonate. "Papa Kalen didn't steal us. He saved us." Arinya ran back, wrapping herself around his leg with a sob. "He's our family. Don't hurt our family." The guards faltered, unwilling to strike with the royal heirs in the line of fire. The Queen's luminous patterns flickered between authority and shock, her gaze locked on the man her daughters clung to as if their lives depended on it. Kalen held perfectly still, every muscle coiled, every instinct screaming danger. Yet in the silence that followed, it was not his voice but the voices of the children that carried the truth across the hall. The chamber was silent but for the soft chime of crystalline ornaments swaying from Queen Elenia's ears. Her silver gaze shifted from her daughter's desperate embrace to the man they clung to as though he were lifeblood itself. The guards held their weapons steady, but their hesitation betrayed confusion. Nothing in their training had prepared them for this. General Kaler, the Queen's chief advisor, broke the silence first. His harmonics cut like steel. Your Majesty, the human has abducted your daughters. Command us, and we will end this insult now. Celiora whirled on him, her glowing skin blazing gold with righteous fury. No. You were not there. You did not hear the ruins fall. You did not see how he carried Arinya when the fire rained from the sky. Papa Kaelin kept us safe when everyone else was gone. Her words struck the chamber like a bell. Even the translator lagged behind, overwhelmed by the strength of her harmonics. Arinya pressed tighter against Kaelin's leg, her small voice trembling yet fierce. He is the best papa in all the stars. He learned our songs. He braided our hair. He never left us, not once. Queen Alenia's breath caught, and her light patterns wavered into fragile hues of disbelief. Papa, she whispered, tasting the foreign word as though it carried more weight than any title. Kaelin swallowed, stepping carefully forward despite the wall of spears still aimed at his chest. His hands were open, his voice steady but low. Your Majesty, I make no claim but this, I did what any soul should. I found 2 children left in the dark, and I could not walk away. They became my duty. They became my family. The queen studied him, eyes sharp enough to pierce armor, yet behind them flickered something else, recognition, even gratitude. Her daughter's glowing pleas burned brighter than any accusation. General Kaelor bristled. Majesty, this human cannot be trusted. He is. Enough. Elenia's voice rang like thunder wrapped in crystal. She rose, her daughters still nestled in her arms. Turning her gaze upon Kaelin, her harmonics softened into chords the translator rendered as wonder. You cared for them when I could not reach them. You gave them love when I feared they had none. That makes you not their captor, but their guardian. Kaelin bowed his head. They are remarkable children, Your Majesty. Brave, wise, stronger than I could ever be. Any parent would be proud of them. Celiora's patterns brightened with fierce pride. Arinya piped up, her childish honesty disarming the chamber. He makes terrible seraphine food, but he tries very hard. For the first time in months, Queen Alenia laughed. The sound was crystalline music, echoing against the vaulted chamber, scattering the last doubts of those gathered. She knelt to embrace her daughters again, her eyes glistening. I thought I had lost you to silence. I searched every world. And all the while, you were safe in the hands of a human who refused to abandon you. The general faltered, lowering his weapon. Majesty, tradition demands recognition. When one saves the royal line. Yes, the queen interrupted, her voice resonant with decree. Her skin patterns resolved into the formal geometries of law. By the ancient rites of the Seraphine, Captain Kaelin Draven, you are named Thrath, guardian of the royal blood. From this moment, you are family. Gasps rippled through the chamber. No precedent existed for adopting an outsider, much less a human. Yet Celiora and Arinya glowed so brightly with joy that none could deny the truth their mother had spoken aloud. Kaelin's throat tightened. Your Majesty, I serve my own people. I cannot abandon them. Nor will you, Alenia replied, her gaze steady. This is not division but bridge. You will stand between our worlds, soldier to your kind, guardian to mine. Through you, both sides will learn that love and loyalty can cross even the deepest rifts. Celiora tugged his sleeve, eyes bright as stars. Does this mean you'll come with us? To the singing forests? To meet grandmother? Arinya giggled, tugging harder. And you must try harmony cakes. They are the sweetest thing in the empire. Kaelin smiled despite himself, tears stinging at the edges of his eyes. Then I suppose I have much to learn. And as Queen Alenia drew closer, laying one regal hand upon his shoulder in recognition, Kaelin realized the impossible had happened. War had been stayed, not by fleets or treaties, but by 2 children who had taught their mother, and him, that family was not bound by blood alone. The chamber erupted into a new rhythm, one not of chaos but of hope. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Diplomats whispered furiously of rewriting accords. But Kalen only felt the weight of Celiora pressed against his side and Arinya tugging his arm, their light patterns swirling in radiant unity. He had gone into the ruins of a dying colony expecting only to follow orders. Instead, he had found daughters who were not his by birth, but by choice. And in that choice, perhaps he had helped save not just 2 lives, but entire worlds from tearing each other apart. Some duties were assigned. Others were chosen. And sometimes, the ones you never asked for were the ones that changed the galaxy. And that, my friends, is how one soldier's refusal to abandon 2 frightened children reshaped the fate of empires. Captain Kalen Draven began as just another officer following orders, but by listening to a cry in the ruins, he became the Thrath, guardian of 2 princesses, bridge between species, and the heart of an alliance that might one day end centuries of conflict. If you enjoyed this story of courage, compassion, and unexpected family, make sure to subscribe for more sci-fi tales that explore the bonds between worlds. Drop a like if Kalen's choice moved you, and don't forget to share this video with someone who believes that kindness can change destinies. Because sometimes, all it takes to alter the stars, is one choice.